Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Prey. I'm the Natural Resources Manager at West Point. I'm also the Acting National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA Coordinator for the Garrison. Today, we are now in our second public scoping meeting. The first one we held at 2 o'clock. On behalf of Colonel Evangeline Roselle, the Garrison Commander, I would like to welcome you all to this teleconference. We will be talking about the Environmental Impact Statement, also known as an EIS, being prepared for the implementation of the Clinton District Area Development Plan here at U.S. Army Garrison West Point. These public scoping meetings are the first step in the process of preparing an EIS. We are asking you to listen in and review a basic outline of a proposed master planning document that covers multiple projects and offer comment on what environmental impacts we should analyze in the EIS. You will be able to make verbal comments later on during this meeting, as well as comment in writing if that is your preference. I would now like to take this opportunity to introduce to you the key staff and subject matter experts and that are on the call with us this evening. So in addition to myself, I have Stephanie Shapiro here from Master Planning, part of DPW at West Point. Mr. Patrick Raley, our Cultural Resources Manager, is also on the line. We have Carissa Scarpa. She is with the New York District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and she is the Army's project manager on this project. And there are several key staff members from First Environment and WSP, the contracting team, who is helping us prepare the EIS and conduct the public involvement for this project. I'll now ask Ms. Brittany Keim from WSP, who will be our facilitator today, to explain how this meeting is going to be structured.
Thank you, Chris, and good evening, everyone. My name is Brittany Keim. I am with WSP, one of the companies contracted by the Army to assist in preparing the EIS and conduct the public involvement portion of the National Environmental Policy Act process. I will be the facilitator for this evening's meeting. As Mr. Prey mentioned, this is one of 2 teleconference virtual scoping meetings for the Clinton District Area Development Plan, EIS, at the U.S. Army Garrison West Point. We are having this teleconference meeting today instead of an in-person meeting in response to the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic in the United States and the Center for Disease Control's recommendation for social distancing and avoiding large public gatherings. A recording of this virtual meeting will be made available online at the website addresses provided in the newspaper notices and the agency letters that were mailed out. In addition to this meeting, scoping materials for the project are also available at that same website address. To begin, I would first like to go over the structure and the housekeeping items for this teleconference meeting. In a few minutes, Spence Smith from WSP will present an overview of the National Environmental Policy Act and the EIS process. After that, Ms. Stephanie Shapiro, a master planner at West Point, will provide an overview of the Clinton District Area Development Plan. I would like to point out that this is a teleconference meeting and it will be limited to an audio presentation. However, you can follow along with the slides that are being used in this presentation by going to your browser and accessing the URL access.live/WP Clinton ADPEIS. Again, that website is access.live/WP Clinton ADPEIS. Please note that all lines will be muted during the presentation. Once the presentation is completed, we will open the line to receive comments, and they will remain open until 8 p.m. this evening. At that time, I will call on everybody who wishes to provide a comment by their first name and the last 4 digits of your phone number, and you will be unmuted to provide your comment. To indicate that you would like to provide a comment, you can press star 3 at any time during this meeting. Once you have pressed star 3, you will be transferred to an operator and asked to provide your name so that we can enter you into the comment queue. During the comment portion of the meeting, when I call on you, your line will be unmuted and your comment will be heard by all the callers in the meeting. Please note that your comments will be recorded, transcribed, and as appropriate, addressed and incorporated into the draft EIS. If you wish to provide a written comment during this call, you may do so by typing it into the comment box at that same website I mentioned earlier. Again, it's access.live/WP Clinton ADP EIS. This comment will not be read aloud, but will be included in the formal record and again, as appropriate, addressed and incorporated into the draft EIS. Outside of today's call, you can also provide comments via email and regular mail to the addresses noted in the newspaper notices and included on the project website. When you arrive at the landing page for the event, you will be given the option to provide your name and email address. If you're interested in receiving future project updates, please be sure to provide your information here. This is optional, and you can choose to close the pop-up box without sharing your information. I will go over additional details on commenting once the presentation is concluded. And now I will turn the virtual mic over to Spence Smith from WSP to give an overview of the National Environmental Policy Act and the EIS process.
Thank you, and good evening. As mentioned, my name is Spence Smith, and I will elaborate on our purpose for being here tonight by giving you a brief introduction to the Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA, including scoping, preparation of the draft and final EISs, and the planned timelines associated with each step of the process. Now to the purpose for being here, the NEPA process, which is described on slide 4 of the presentation if you're following along. The National Environmental Policy Act was signed into law in 1970 with a goal for the federal government to use all practicable means to create and maintain conditions under which man and nature can exist in productive harmony. It requires federal agencies to examine their proposed action or actions and what impacts those actions might have on the human environment, which includes natural, cultural, and socioeconomic resources. The law also requires that a federal agency identify all reasonable alternatives to the proposed action. The federal agency is then required to share the results of the impacts analysis with the public. The impacts assessment and sharing of the findings with the public must occur prior to a federal agency making any decision on the proposed action. Depending on the proposed action and the environment in which the action would occur, the impacts assessment process will require one of the following 3 different levels of analysis. The first level is a categorical exclusion, also known as a CADEX. This analysis involves those actions that a federal agency has determined do not individually or cumulatively have a significant effect on the quality of the human environment and therefore are categorically excluded from detailed environmental analysis. An example of a CADEX would be for a road or trail construction and repair on existing rights-of-ways or on previously disturbed areas. Depending upon the CADEX used, the Army may be required to prepare a record of environmental consideration that documents that the action has received environmental review. The second level of analysis is an environmental assessment, or EA. This analysis is prepared when there is uncertainty as to whether a proposed project will have significant impacts on the human environment. Impact assessment results in either a finding of no significant impact, also known as a FONSI, or a need to prepare an environmental impact statement. If an EA results in a FONSI, the federal agency can make the decision on the proposed action. The third level of analysis is an environmental impact statement, or EIS. A federal agency prepares an EIS for those proposed actions that are anticipated to have a significant impact on the human environment. For implementing the Clinton District Area Development Plan at West Point, the Army has determined that it requires an EIS. Compared to an EA, an EIS involves regulatory requirements that are more detailed and rigorous, including public involvement requirements such as this scoping process, something that is not required for an EA. For an EIS, NEPA requires that a federal agency follow an open and early process to engage and provide other agencies, organizations, Native American tribes, and the public an opportunity to provide input on the range of issues to be addressed in an EIS. The initial phase for public involvement in an EIS is the scoping process, which is intended to inform the public of an agency's proposed action and its intent to prepare an EIS. Additionally, a federal agency uses the scoping process to gather input and comments on the proposed action and the scope of analysis to be addressed in the draft EIS. As part of the scoping process, we are here today for a scoping meeting for the EIS for the proposed implementation of the Clinton District Area Development Plan at West Point. While there are a variety of methods that a federal agency can use to conduct a scoping meeting, due to COVID-19 restrictions, the Army has chosen to conduct a virtual conference call rather than a typical in-person meeting as mentioned earlier. Whether a meeting is virtual or in person, the goal of a scoping meeting remains the same, and therefore, the purpose of this meeting is to provide information on the EIS process and public involvement opportunities, as well as inform the public of the proposed action. Most importantly, it is to solicit your comments on the proposed action so that your input can assist the Army in determining or further refining the scope of issues for analysis in the EIS. This includes identifying the significant issues that the EIS should focus on and eliminating non-significant issues from further study. As indicated on slide 7 of the presentation, there are 6 general steps of an EIS process, and this scoping meeting falls within Step 1, Project Initiation. Step 1 also includes determining the level of NEPA analysis required, developing the purpose and need for the project, and developing a range of reasonable alternatives for implementing the project. Later, you will hear Ms. Stephanie Shapiro discuss the purpose and need for the Clinton District Area Development Plan and the current range of alternatives to be analyzed in the EIS. At this point, it's important to note that no impact analysis or decision on the project has been made yet, and to reiterate, the goal of this meeting is for the Army to solicit your comments and input on the project for consideration in preparing the EIS and the impacts analysis. Therefore, this meeting is not designed to be a question and answer session. The Army is strictly looking to gather your comments and input for consideration in determining or further refining the scope of issues for analysis. This will then inform Steps 2 and 3, data collection and alternatives analysis, respectively. Step 2 includes identifying any data and source material that can be used, including any related studies such as cultural resource surveys or a wetland delineation. Step 2 also includes developing the existing conditions section of the EIS, that is to say, the current conditions at West Point without the proposed action. Analyzing the impacts of the proposed action and its alternatives on the existing conditions occurs in Step 3, as well as identifying any measures to minimize or mitigate those impacts. In Step 4, distribution of the draft EIS and review, once the draft EIS has been completed, the Army will distribute the document to agencies, organizations, Native American tribes, and the public for a 45-day review period. During the public review period, the Army will gather comments on the draft EIS and hold additional public meetings to share the findings of the impact analysis and related mitigation measures. Given COVID-19, at the appropriate time, the Army will decide on the type of public meeting to hold for the draft EIS, whether it's virtual or in person. The Army will review the comments received during the draft EIS public comment period and consider them when preparing the final EIS, which will include the Army's responses to the comments. In Step 5, Finalize the Eis, the Army will identify a preferred or selected alternative in the final EIS and distribute the document to agencies, organizations, tribes, and the public, and start a wait or no action period. During the wait or no action period, agencies are required to wait 30 days before making a final decision on proposed action. Then in Step 6, Decision, following the 30-day wait or no action period, the Army will prepare a record of decision, also known as a ROD, which is a concise summary of its decision based on the alternatives presented in the final EIS. The ROD will state the decision, identify alternatives considered, and identify any mitigation measures it is committing to implement. The ROD will also address any new substantive comments received from review of the final EIS that were not previously addressed and discuss other considerations that influence the decision. A typical schedule for an EIS is 2 years. The Army began the EIS process for this project on October 9th, when it issued a Notice of Intent to prepare an EIS in the Federal Register. The notice was also published in local papers, and notification letters were mailed to agencies, organizations, tribes, and the public, and today we are at the public scoping meeting stage. The Army will accept comments on the project during the 45-day public scoping period, which will end on November 23rd. The Army will then prepare a draft EIS, which is with an anticipated publication of it in summer of 2021. The public review period for the draft EIS will be 45 days and is also planned for summer 2021. After that review period, the Army will then prepare the final EIS with a planned publication date in fall 2022. After the 30-day wait or no action period, the Army will publish its record of decision, which is also planned for fall of 2022. As mentioned earlier, the scope of the impact analysis for a proposed action depends on the actions themselves and the environment where the proposed action will occur. For the Clinton District Area Development Plan, EIS, the Army has identified land use, air quality and greenhouse gases, noise, geological and soil resources, water resources, biological resources, cultural resources and viewshed, transportation and traffic, utilities, and hazardous and toxic materials and waste as the resource areas to be analyzed in the EIS. The EIS will also analyze impacts to the resource areas, including compliance and relevant regulations such as the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, and Endangered Species Act, to name a few examples. Of the resource areas that I just listed, the Army has identified cultural resources as one of the areas of key concerns due to West Point's rich heritage with its nationally recognized National Historic Landmark District and the potential for the proposed action to have significant adverse effects to historic properties, including historic buildings, archaeological sites, landscapes, and viewsheds. Because of the potential for significant impacts to historic properties, the Army is required to conduct Section 106 consultation under the National Historic Preservation Act, which requires that a federal agency take into account any effect or potential effect of their undertakings on historic properties listed in or eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. As part of the analysis of impact on cultural resources and as part of its Section 106 consultation, the Army will consider all relevant previous agreements to ensure a comprehensive review. The other identified resource area of key concern is biological resources. This is due to the presence of protected species such as short-nosed and Atlantic sturgeon, northern long-eared bat, and bald and golden eagles in the area, and the potential for adverse impacts on these species from in-water work, transportation, and tree removal. Additionally, potential adverse impacts from construction noise and rock removal and traffic associated with construction are of key concerns. Now a quick look at the other resource areas that the Army will analyze in the EIS, as seen starting on slide 12 of the presentation if you are following along. The Army will analyze land use because some projects may alter or enhance existing recreation opportunities and infrastructure and may invite visitor traffic to cadet-only or residential areas. Air quality and greenhouse gases will be analyzed because West Point is located in an area with air quality concerns in construction, demolition, and some operational activities would produce air emissions and greenhouse gases. Geological and soil resources will be analyzed due to the blasting of rock and the potential requirement to remove rock and soil for construction purposes. Water resources will be analyzed because some of the projects occur within the banks of the Hudson River, and others that are close to surface waters will require adherence to stormwater regulations and spill prevention plans. Utilities and hazardous and toxic materials and waste are two other topics that the Army will analyze in the EIS. The former, because the proposed new buildings and facilities will increase demand for electricity and other utilities, and construction and excavation activities could impact aging underground utilities. The latter, because there may be lead and/or asbestos contamination in older facilities, and unexploded ordnance contamination is at a higher likelihood in some areas of the Clinton district. That will, in a nutshell, the EIS process and the scope of the EIS that the Army has identified coming into today's meeting. With this scoping meeting today, the Army is following the intent of NEPA to provide an early and open process by which it can determine those issues that need to be identified and addressed. Therefore, the Army is here to solicit your comments and will be listening to what you have to say, and as appropriate, address and incorporate your input into the EIS analysis. Now, without further ado, I will turn the virtual mic over to Ms. Stephanie Shapiro to give you an overview of the proposed action at West Point that is the subject of this EIS.
Thank you, Spence. Good evening. My name is Stephanie Shapiro, and I'm a master planner at West Point, and I'll be giving you an overview of the Clinton District Area Development Plan. Beginning on slide 15 of the presentation, West Point is located along the Hudson River, approximately 50 miles north of New York City. Comprising 16,000 acres, it is home to the United States Military Academy, the Army's preeminent leader development institution. West Point began as a strategic military position during the Revolutionary War, and in 1802, the Military Academy was established. The next slide has a figure of West Point in its entirety and shows that the Clinton District is located along the Hudson River in the northeast corner of the installation. Beginning on slide 17, I will now briefly describe the Clinton District and the development of the Clinton District Area Development Plan. The Clinton District encompasses 395 acres and comprises the main campus of the Military Academy. It is one of 6 separate districts identified within the West Point Real Property Master Plan, or the RPMP. An RPMP is a roadmap to ensure installation real property supports long-term mission requirements, and it addresses the effective long-term management of installation facilities and infrastructure through a comprehensive and collaborative planning process. The 2017 West Point Real Property Vision Plan provided the garrison with the first 2 components of the overall RPMP, which were the Vision Plan and the Installation Planning Standards. The RPMP Vision Framework Plan divided West Point into 6 identifiable and connected districts based on geographical features, land use patterns, building types, and/or transportation networks. For the Clinton District, it is the heart of historic West Point. It is home to the Military Academy's academic core and contains the majority of the academic, athletic, and waterfront areas on West Point, and it includes such prominent areas as Trophy Point, the Plain, Eisenhower Hall, and the West Point Cemetery. As part of the long-range component of the RPMP, Area Development Plans, or ADPs, are prepared for each district identified in the Vision Framework Plan. Focusing on districts allows for the identification of unique needs due to mission, requirements, or command priority changes. As mentioned, the Clinton District is the heart of historic West Point, and it is the most sensitive area of the garrison due to its location within the U.S. Military Academy National Historic Landmark District. The Clinton District encompasses significant historic buildings and structures, archaeological sites, and historic landscapes. The Clinton District ADP was developed through an internal stakeholder-driven planning process and identifies short, mid, and long-range projects that emphasize the specific needs of those living and or working within the Clinton District. I'm now on slides 19 and 20. As mentioned, the proposed action is to implement the Clinton District ADP at West Point. The ADP comprises 28 projects that fall within 3 different time frames. Short range, which are 1 to 5 years, mid-range, 6 to 15 years, and long range, 16 to 20 years. Short-range projects focus mainly on outdoor and recreational improvements. The mid-range plan primarily comprises transportation projects, and additional connection and improvement projects occur in the long-range plan. Later, I will provide a brief description of each project. Now to discuss the reason for the Army's proposed action. As seen on slide 21 of the presentation, the purpose for implementing the ADP and the projects contained within it is to allow improvements and effective long-term management of installation facilities and infrastructure within the Clinton District. These projects are needed so that the Military Academy can continue improving its infrastructure while observing the constraints of its physical location and protecting its cultural and natural resources. The ADP includes several projects that are to be built, renovated, or reorganized to meet the needs of providing modern structures for the training of the Corps of Cadets as future leaders. The proposed action would allow West Point to balance a military and collegiate feel with a pedestrian-centric design that provides connected, accessible facilities and spaces with modern, reliable infrastructure, achieving 3 planning goals of the Clinton District ADP. As mentioned, the ADP includes short, mid, and long-range projects. These projects are at different stages of development, with some currently ongoing and others at a conceptual stage. The level of analyses in the EIS will depend on the project's developmental stage. In the EIS, projects that are further along in development will be evaluated in detail, while projects at a conceptual stage will be evaluated at a programmatic level. For those potential future development opportunities evaluated in the EIS at a programmatic level, Army Garrison West Point will ensure that appropriate NEPA reviews are completed when each project reaches the stage appropriate for specific decision-making. Additionally, 4 of the Clinton District ADP projects have already had NEPA documentation completed on them and a FONSI, or Record of Environmental Consideration, signed. Therefore, those 4 projects do not need new impact analyses conducted on them. However, because they are part of the Clinton District ADP, the EIS will incorporate summaries of their prior approved NEPA analyses. The EIS will analyze 3 alternatives: 2 action alternatives and the no action alternative. Alternative 1, which is the preferred alternative, would fully implement the Clinton District ADP and all of the projects contained within it. Alternative 2 would implement the Clinton District ADP, but without the project revitalization of Trophy Point and the Humanities Center. In addition to the 2 action alternatives, the EIS would also analyze the no action alternative. Under the no action alternative, the Army would not implement the projects identified in the Clinton District ADP for which prior NEPA documentation has not been completed. In other words, none of the 28 projects identified in the Clinton District ADP would be implemented, except for the 4 projects for which NEPA documentation has already been completed and approved through the signing of a FONSI, or a Record of Environmental Consideration. I will now be followed by Chris Prey, who will kick us off by providing brief descriptions of the projects in the Clinton District ADP, starting with slide 24 with the short-range projects.
Thank you, Stephanie. First are the short-range projects, those which would occur within 5 years. The 4 Clinton District ADP projects with prior approved NEPA analysis are among the short-range projects. Project A would create a 2-acre park near Lee Gate for community use. It would incorporate play and picnic space as well as sanitary facilities and would be Americans with Disabilities Act compliant. Project B would create a multi-purpose trail to facilitate cadet and public movement from the Lee housing area to the Target Hill athletic fields. Project C would build a wastewater treatment plant to replace the existing Target Hill plant and increase treatment capacity from the current 2.06 million gallons per day to 2.3 million gallons per day to meet current and future needs. The Army has already completed an environmental assessment for this project and signed a finding of no significant impact. The original plan was for the new plant to be located adjacent to the existing facility. Operations at the existing facility would be maintained through the construction phase and then demolished after the successful startup of the new facility. The proposed area associated with the new wastewater treatment plant was to be the currently utilized athletic fields adjacent. In 2020, the operation of the wastewater treatment plant was contracted to American Waters. This contractor is revisiting the design to consider a smaller footprint with reuse and upgrade of existing features. Project D would construct a trail network above Target Hill Field to join the cemetery, Lee CDC, and the old PX areas to facilities at Target Hill Field, taking advantage of scenic viewpoints and paralleling the cascade of Crow's Nest Brook as it flows from Lee housing to the athletic fields. The trails would include picnic and resting areas. Project E would expand the historic West Point Cemetery in 2 phases over the next 50 to 75 years. The first phase is currently underway and includes the removal of an existing gas station and holding tanks to provide space for the cemetery expansion. Some parking from Building 683, the former PX facility, was lost in this expansion. The expansion also includes 2 buildings for maintenance and storage. In future phases, Building 683 would potentially be demolished to provide additional space for the cemetery. Both phases correspond with the original plan and design by the Olmsted Brothers landscape design firm. The Army has completed an EA for this project and signed a finding of no significant impact. Project F would renovate Fire Station 1 and modernize and expand the existing USMA fire station to serve as a two-company headquarters fire station. It is needed to provide adequate services for the cadet area of the military academy and adequate space for the fire departmental headquarters operations. Project G would expand Gillis Fieldhouse on the southeast side for additional athletic programs. A secondary equipment, strength training, and athletic training support facility would be developed at the Fieldhouse. The expansion would be a two-story addition with a maximum building area of approximately 12,000 square feet. Project H would renovate North Dock, which includes a helipad, a small park with seating, and parking spaces. The dock is structurally deficient with separations and gaps developing in the sheet piling and areas of collapse in the decking as fill has leaked past the sheet piling into the Hudson. Currently, the helipad is unusable due to a large sinkhole that is formed. The project would enclose the entire bulkhead and helipad in a new sheet pile and grout structure anchored to the bedrock and through the existing dock and make repairs to the riprap adjacent to the helipad. A record of environmental consideration using a categorical exclusion has been completed for this action. West Point is currently finalizing the design and seeking the necessary permits for construction. Project I would renovate the Trophy Point Amphitheater to modernize the amphitheater to resolve health and safety issues. It would upgrade infrastructure and stage equipment, walkways, lighting, railings, and electrical service to support the visitor experience. It would also enhance views to the Hudson River and frame views across the plain to Washington Hall. It would create pedestrian connections to Thayer Walk and surrounding amenities, and enhance the park-like setting around Trophy Point, and cultivate a natural landscape within this zone. Project J is to revitalize Trophy Point with the Humanities Center. This project would build an approximately 31,000 square foot Humanities Center into the hillside overlooking the Hudson River on Trophy Point. The center would correspond with adjacent Trophy Point pedestrian and landscape improvements. The new facility would support West Point faculty and cadet research, encourage interdisciplinary partnerships, and foster innovation. Within the center, gallery spaces, classrooms, and a multi-use theater would provide West Point a landmark facility for various public and private functions. The building would be a cast-in-place concrete two-story structure on two below-grade levels with a steel-supported grass-covered roof and house a 200-person theater, exhibition space, cafe, and gift shop on cellar 1 level, and conference rooms, meeting rooms, administrative offices, and mechanical spaces on cellar 2 level. Project K would create an approximately 1/3 acre outdoor classroom and meeting space with seating surrounding a central area for lectures and debates. Landscaping would be naturalistic with plantings and hardscapes designed to create a private space. Project L would renovate approximately 124,000 square feet of Arvin Gym with the possibility to expand Crandall Pool to an Olympic-sized pool by building out into the adjacent parking lot. I will now hand over the description of the rest of the projects to Ms. Stephanie Shapiro, who will take us through the remaining projects starting on slide 27.
Thank you, Chris. Project M would build a retractable roof over the superintendent's box on the parade field viewing area. Project N at the Old Fort Clinton area proposes to enhance recreation along the waterfront by creating seating and picnic space. Project O is the new Cyber and Engineering Academic Center, or SEAC, with a parking structure on the lower levels. The SEAC provides modern classrooms, laboratories, and technology to support cadet engineering education. Additional outdoor gathering spaces, landscaping, and other pedestrian amenities would be included in the project. Upon completion, all of Thayer Road would be converted to a pedestrian thoroughfare. The Army has completed an EA for the project and signed a finding of no significant impact. Project P would renovate South Dock with Harbor Master House. This project would demolish the existing Harbor Master office, the dock, wharf, and pilings, and replace them with a flood-elevated Harbor Master office building, new L-shaped dock, and new wharf. Additionally, the design would encompass 3 options for vessel accommodation, ranging from 400 long tons to 1,200 long tons. The larger vessel accommodation would allow Coast Guard icebreakers to dock at West Point for emergencies. On slide 28, Project Q would improve the historic walking trail between Central Area and South Dock. Project R would relocate the yacht club that is currently located just north of South Dock. Pending the implementation of published plans by the Village of Highland Falls to revitalize and redevelop its waterfront, West Point would explore mutually beneficial partnerships for hosting the West Point Yacht Club at the village-owned marina. Next, beginning on slide 29, are the mid-range projects that would occur within 6 to 15 years. Project S consolidates parking near the uniform factory and band building to improve parking capacity and traffic flow. For Boardwalk Phase 1, Project T would construct a boardwalk along the Hudson River shoreline connecting Southville and Flirtation Walk. Project U would build an elevated loading dock behind Washington Hall to provide truck access from above at DeRussy Road, improving delivery logistics. Project V, the Davis-Washington building connection, would construct an enclosed walkway connection between Davis Barracks and Washington Hall. Project W would construct a bypass road from the lower South Dock area to Trophy Point. This would allow West Point to restrict unauthorized vehicle traffic along Cullum Road and enhance security to the main campus area. Lastly are the long-range projects that will occur 16 to 20 years. Project X would renovate Eisenhower Hall, which is approximately 100,000 square feet, to provide a more centralized location for cadet clubs, as well as mechanical, electrical, life health safety, and ADA upgrades. Boardwalk Phase 2, Project Y, would continue the Phase 1 work under Project T by constructing the riverfront walkway connecting Flirtation Walk to Ordnance Compound. Project Z would build approximately 2,500 square feet connection between Building 603 and 607 to create year-round thoroughfares and collaboration spaces. Following the development of a bypass road under Project W, Project AA would convert Cullum Road to a pedestrian thoroughfare. Project AB would build an approximately 9,000 square foot cadet union between Building 600 and Building 752 Mahan Hall. I'm now on slides 31 and 32. That was a brief description of the 28 projects proposed in the Clinton District ADP. As you can see on slides 31 and 32, it shows figures of the north and south areas of the Clinton District with the location of the 28 projects depicted on them. Moving on to slide 33. As mentioned earlier, the significant impacts associated with implementing the ADP are mostly related to the revitalization of Trophy Point with the approximately 31,000 square foot Humanities Center. The Humanities Center would correspond with the adjacent Trophy Point pedestrian and landscape improvements, support USMA faculty and cadet research, encourage interdisciplinary partnerships and foster innovation, include gallery spaces, classrooms, and a multi-use theater, and provide United States Army Garrison West Point with a landmark facility for various public and private functions. Now I will hand the virtual mic back to Brittany Keim from WSP.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good evening again. We recognize that that was a lot of information in a verbal format, so I would like to remind you that a copy of this presentation and other scoping materials that describe the proposed action and the individual projects within the ADP is available online by going to the website indicated in the newspaper notices. The same website is also indicated on slide 34, the last slide of the presentation, if you are following along. As mentioned earlier, we are collecting your comments via several different avenues. You can provide your comments to us today during this conference call. You can mail your comments to West Point, or you can email your comments to westpointclinton-adpeis@usace.army.mil. Again, that email address is westpointclinton-adp@usace.army.mil. The mailing and email addresses where you can send your comments are provided on the last slide of this presentation, in the newspaper notices, as well as on the website and in all the scoping materials. The website is also where we will publish the draft EIS for viewing and downloading, as well as other documents produced as a part of this project when they become available. Therefore, you'll likely want to bookmark or otherwise write down the website address for easy access in the future. I would like to say again how much we appreciate your attendance today. We view compliance with state and federal environmental regulations as an opportunity to learn about the public's interests and concerns about the proposed action and do so early enough in the process so that we can address any concerns and consider them in the decision-making process. This is your formal opportunity to learn about the proposed action and comment on it. We are especially interested in hearing any of your concerns or issues related to the proposed actions that you might have. This will assist the Army with refining the areas of focus as it prepares the EIS. Issues that are important to you are important to the Army as well. There are no issues too inconsequential for us to consider. So sharing your concerns with us will allow us to address them during the preparation of the EIS and will allow us to make sure your concerns are taken into account. With that, we will start the verbal comment session today. As previously mentioned, in a few minutes, we will open the telephone lines and I will be calling on you to provide your comment. I will call on you in the order in which you have indicated that you would like to provide a comment. If you have not indicated that you would like to provide a comment but want to do so, you can do that now by pressing *3. Once you've pressed *3, you will be asked to provide your name and we will enter you into the comment queue. When I call upon you, I will unmute your phone so that you can make your statement. Please keep in mind that we want to hear from everyone this evening and we ask that you limit your verbal comments to 3 minutes. Comments that would require more than 3 minutes may be submitted in writing, and written comments can be as lengthy as you wish. Before we start receiving comments, I would like to once again remind you that this meeting is a scoping meeting, and as such, the goal is for the Army to receive your comments. It is not designed as a question and answer session. Therefore, your comments or questions will not be addressed today. Your comments will be recorded, transcribed, and as appropriate, addressed and incorporated into the draft EIS. So with that, we will get started. If you would like to make a comment on the line, again, the thing to press is *3. You press *3 and you will get connected to one of our operators who will get you placed in the verbal line. I will say that we did have a comment that came in through the online portion that was a question about a copy of these slides. As I mentioned, these slides are available on the project website, so you can access those there. Additionally, if you would like to make a written comment, you can submit that via email at the email address westpointclinton-adp@usace.army.mil. We will give people a minute here to get dialed in and into the queue line. Again, if you'd like to make a comment, you can do so by pressing *3 on your phone at this time. Again, there are several ways to submit a comment. You can do so today verbally if you press *3. You can also submit it by mail, and the mailing address for that is included in the newspaper notices as well as on the last slide of the presentation. If you'd like to see the last slide of the presentation and you're near a computer or mobile device, you can type in the following into your browser. It's access.live/WP Clinton ADP EIS. Again, that's access.live/WP Clinton ADP EIS. And you'll be able to see the slide that we are on, which has information on how to submit your comments in writing by mail or by email. As a reminder, all comments should be postmarked by November 23rd. Again, if you'd like to provide a verbal comment, you can press *3 at any time, and we will get you set up in the queue to provide a comment. So this concludes the formal presentation portion of tonight's meetings, but we are leaving the line open so that we can take comments from individuals if they would like to provide one. In order to get in line to provide your verbal comment, please press *3 on your phone. All right, it looks like we have Michelle here who would like to provide a comment. Michelle, with the last 4 digits, 7947. You should be live on the line to provide your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm Michelle Smith with the Hudson Highlands Land Trust, and I am just coming across this information, so I haven't done as much research as I would like to, so I'll also submit written comments. But I did want to make a comment on Trophies Point Humanities Centre. It does appear to be a large building, and while I don't have the specifications or a design plan that I can view, I do think it's important in the EIS to address the visual impact from the river and from the major viewpoints around the area. There is a lot of parkland, state parkland, and the Appalachian Trail in the area, and I would like to see that the EIS address the visual impacts from all those important viewpoints. And I will have additional comments about potential impact on natural resources and that being part of the scoping when I submit written comments and I've had more time to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your comment, and it will be recorded, transcribed, and as appropriate, addressed and incorporated into the draft EIS. There are others on the phone who would like to provide a verbal comment. You may do so by pressing *3, and we will make sure your comments are recorded and transcribed and as appropriate addressed in the draft EIS as we have discussed here today. If you'd like to submit a comment in writing, you may do so via email by emailing westpointclinton-adp@usace.army.mil. Once again, the formal presentation portion of this meeting has concluded, and we are now in the comment session. If anybody would like to provide a comment, they may press *3 at any time. Otherwise, we will be simply leaving this line open until 8 p.m. Eastern Time to ensure anybody who would like to provide a comment has the opportunity to do so. All right, as we are approaching 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we just want to say thank you again for joining us today for this presentation and comment session. As a reminder, you do have until November 23rd to submit comments in writing, and you can do that at the email address or the mailing address provided in the presentation, and you can find that on the product website as well as in the newspaper advertisements for the event. We'd like to thank you for your participation and wish you well and have a good evening.